confused. And it seems like every time Mr. Wes here reads the Quran, he gets super confused, right? And then for some reason, he has to go on national television and embarrass himself. Don't worry about my voice. Kind of sick, but I just want to finish this.
Well, I think the Quran has a number of problematic historical issues, the chief of which is that Surah 4:157 denies the historical crucifixion of Jesus.
The Quran is false because it denies the crucifixion of Jesus, as if the crucifixion is a historical fact. No one is saying that the crucifixion is a historical fact. There is no proof of it. There is no evidence of the crucifixion. It's a belief based entirely on the Bible that you're reading. It is a biblical fact. Yeah. Historical fact? A fact in general? No, it's not.
And so there's ambiguity as to what's going on in that text when it says that Jesus was neither killed nor was he crucified. And I think that really paints the historical reliability of the Quran into a corner.
The only ambiguity here that lies in verse 4:157 is concerning the people who thought they killed Jesus. Indeed, the situation was ambiguous to them, as the verse states that they were uncertain about anything. The verse states, even those who argue for the crucifixion are in doubt. They have no knowledge whatsoever, only making assumptions. They certainly did not kill him. But to say that there is ambiguity in the verse about the fate of Jesus is simply ridiculous. The Quran is very clear when it comes to the fate of Jesus and the crucifixion. The verse explicitly says that Jesus was never crucified. Instead, he was saved by God and raised up to him. We have no problem with that. This is exactly how all Muslims always understood this. We never had any confusion about this topic until Mr. Wes here comes in and get confused. And it seems like every time Mr. Wes here reads the Quran, he gets super confused, right? And then for some reason, he has to go on national television and embarrass himself.
If there's one thing that even the most skeptical scholars historically will say, if they say we really can know not that much about Jesus of Nazareth, they will admit and say what we can know is that he did die under the reign of Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea at that time, that he was indeed crucified.
Well, again, it comes back to the actual evidence, the source of all this information and this knowledge about Jesus' life. We have almost nothing when it comes to the actual life of Jesus outside of the Bible. So to say like if you quote scholars like Bart Ehrman, I think that's his name, is like a scholar in the New Testament, and old scholars like Josephus who talk about the crucifixion. But Josephus himself, he came like years later. He was born in like I think 35 AD, and he wrote his famous books in the first century as well. But it was after the whole event ended. So again, his information would come from people repeating that. We do agree that a lot of people thought indeed Jesus was crucified, that he died that way. We have no problem. We know that people believe that. That's why you believe that too today. But when we are talking about going back to the actual evidence, the source, if you take this Bible and what's in it, and you go to a trial, it's not going to hold. Okay, that's not evidence. It's just belief. Now, if you can prove that this historical character, this historical figure actually got crucified, then yeah, that could become a historical fact. But Christians, you don't have any evidence for the crucifixion. All you have is this book, all right? You got a book called the Bible that has a lot of problems, that have a lot of mistakes, has a lot of contradictions. And to say that anything that is mentioned in this book is a historical fact is a very bold claim. And I don't think anyone would take you seriously. Now let's take a step back, right, and look at the whole event of the crucifixion. If, let's say, all these four gospel writers were actually on the scene and they were actually eyewitnesses, they would have at least an agreement when it comes to the, let's say, the last words of Jesus before he got crucified. But even that, they don't have that in common. Every single gospels write different last words of Jesus. They're not even in agreement with that. Like, for example, there's the famous last words of Jesus when he says, God, why have you forsaken me? And then the other gospel says that his last word was, um, it is finished. And then there's so even that, which is supposed to be something that they should easily agree on, they don't agree on. That's the first thing. But again, let's take a step back and focus on the eyewitnesses of this crucifixion. We have the Gospel of Mark. Let's just take an example of the Gospel of Mark, but you can apply it on the other Gospels as well. We have the Gospel of Mark, right? And then we have someone who's telling us, right? We read, so Jesus was on the cross, and then someone is talking to us. Who is talking? Mark, right? Okay, so we have the first one, the first eyewitness, Mark. All right, so Mark was an eyewitness during the crucifixion, right? Okay, wait a minute. Mark is not an eyewitness, but Mark was actually a disciple of Peter, who was actually a disciple of Jesus. Okay, great, that makes more sense. So Peter was in the uh, on the scene of the crucifixion during that time. So Peter is an eyewitness. Okay, so Marx says this from Peter, who was present. Wait, Peter was not there. Peter was actually running for his life, according to the Gospels. Okay, so where is this information coming from? Who's giving us this information of the crucifixion? If it's not Mark, if it's not Peter, who is telling us all these things? Well, the only explanation here is that they are anonymous. We don't know. We don't know who come up with this information. We have no idea who's talking, who's actually giving us this information. They are anonymous accounts. And then these anonymous people telling you that Mary was there, and the other Mary, the mother of James, and the mother of Jesus, was there. And then John adds another guy who was there, who turns out to be himself because he's the beloved disciple, whatever. So the whole things make no sense. The more you read about the crucifixion, the more questions you get. So if anything, it's exactly what the Quran tells you. It's just guessing and speculations. Nothing is 100% sure about, when it comes to crucifixion. And again, just read the Gospels, all four of them. The more you read about that event, the more confused you get, the more questions you get. And that's exactly, again, what the Quran is telling us about the whole event. And then it tells us what exactly happened. And then you get a lot of, I wouldn't say like low IQ Christians, but I don't know what to call them. They say, oh, well, you got this guy, Muhammad, peace be upon him, came 600 years after the time of Jesus. Why should we trust someone who's, well, first of all, we're not saying that Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a eyewitness of anything. We say that this information came from the divine. It comes from God himself. It's not him. It's not the prophet who is giving us this information. It's God. And since God exists all the time, he existed during the time of Jesus, during the time of Moses, and during the time of Muhammad, peace be upon him, and even today, he can provide us this information, this knowledge. There's no problem with that.
And so I find the Quran has a number of very problematic historical issues.
Again, it's a bold claim to say, if you deny anything that is mentioned in the Bible, then you're wrong. Because anything that is mentioned in the Bible is historical fact and it's historically accurate. Come on, don't do that.